We need change. We need change. I know many very capable black coaches, some of my staff who I know, if given an opportunity or when given an opportunity, are going to go and do a great job on their interview.
It's been in existence in the NFL for about 20 years. And the reason why it came to be was because there was an issue with the hiring practice in the NFL. Prior to the Rooney Rule, the first African-American or black head coach was hired in 1989. I was a senior in high school.
The National Football League, America's most watched sport, a billion-dollar empire built on athleticism, strategy, and dreams. But behind the bright lights and roaring crowds, a darker truth is emerging. Current and former NFL coaches are breaking their silence, exposing systemic racism that has plagued the league for decades.
Before the NFL even had one black coach. And so the Rooney Rule was put in place in order to try to correct that. Unfortunately, what has now happened is that owners and teams are now fulfilling the obligations of the Rooney Rule, which requires teams to interview at least 2 minority candidates for positions. But that doesn't guarantee that you're going to move on from the interview process to actually being hired. So when the Rooney Rule was put in place, there were 2 black head coaches in the NFL. Today it's down to 1.
From hiring practices to locker room culture, from front office decisions to coaching opportunities, the allegations are damning, and they're coming from the very people who were supposed to be part of the solution. Veteran sports journalists aren't buying the league's messaging. ESPN's LZ Granderson, a prominent voice in sports media, delivered a scathing critique of the NFL's diversity claims.
I'm so sick of the NFL talking about how important diversity is to it when we have been having this conversation for 20 years. Like, how do they even rationalize saying that, knowing that they had to put a rule in just to interview us to begin with? How is diversity a core value?
Furthermore, he expands the criticism to broader LGBTQ+ inclusion and accountability, using the decades-long gap between Dave Kopai, 1970s, and recent openly gay players as evidence.
You just got your first openly gay player. How is diversity a core value? Dave Kopai came out in the 70s. You just got your first openly gay one this season. So diversity can't be a core value. Diversity is something that you say to get people off your back, that you're working on things. We'll put on a decal. We'll put in end racism in our end zone. Because at the end of the day, we're too popular of a sport to actually be held accountable.
It started with whispers in coaching circles, conversations behind closed doors. But in recent months, those whispers have become roars. The moment that shattered the NFL's silence came in February 2022, when former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores filed a bombshell lawsuit against the league and multiple teams, alleging systematic racial discrimination in hiring practices. Flores didn't just file legal papers, he spoke from the heart about the talented black coaches he knew were being overlooked. Coaches who deserved their shot at leadership, but were trapped in a system that seemed designed to keep them out.
We need change. We need change. I know many very capable black coaches, some of my staff who I know, if given an opportunity or when given an opportunity, are going to go and do a great job on their interview.
The numbers tell a stark story. Despite the NFL having 53% black players, only 19% of head coaches are black. In coordinator positions, the traditional stepping stones to head coaching roles, the disparity is even more pronounced. However, not all NFL figures acknowledge these problems. Some head coaches have pushed back against allegations of systemic racism, creating even more controversy. Denver Broncos head coach Vic Fangio sparked outrage when he dismissed claims of discrimination entirely. He said, "I don't see discrimination in the NFL. We all live together, joined as one for one common goal. We intermingle and mix tremendously. If society reflected an NFL team, we'd all be great." Fangio's comments ignited a firestorm of criticism from media personalities who saw his statement as dangerously out of touch with reality. ESPN's Stephen A. Smith delivered one of the most scathing responses, questioning Fangio's credibility and awareness.
Well, it's one of three things. He's either blind, he's hypocritical, or he's a flat out liar. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. It's an incredibly embarrassing, insensitive, and ignorant statement, to say the least. And clearly, he has not been speaking to some of his contemporaries in the National Football League.
But Smith wasn't finished. He went on to challenge Fangio directly, suggesting the coach speak to prominent figures in the NFL who could educate him about the real experiences of black coaches trying to advance their careers.
Maybe he should call Anthony Lynn. Maybe he should call Mike Tomlin. Maybe he should call Brian Flores, or the host of assistant coaches on the NFL level, starving for an opportunity at Ascension and have been denied time and time and time again. Obviously, that isn't applicable to those head coaches that I've mentioned, but certainly an abundance of others who have been starving for opportunities and have been ostracized, have been minimized, have been pigeonholed.
To understand the current crisis, we must examine the NFL's troubled history with race. From 1933 to 1946, the NFL had an unofficial ban on black players. When integration finally came, it was slow and often met with resistance. The integration of players was just the first step, but the power structures, coaching, front office, ownership, remained largely unchanged. Fast forward to 2003. The NFL instituted the Rooney Rule, requiring teams to interview minority candidates for head coaching positions. It was seen as progressive. However, critics now argue that it wasn't enough. The controversy around Fangio's comments also sparked broader discussions about whether sports teams truly represent racial harmony. Former NBA player turned ESPN analyst Jalen Rose challenged the common narrative that locker rooms are examples of perfect integration. Rose's point cuts to the heart of the issue, that professional necessity doesn't eliminate bias, it just masks it. He went further, suggesting that coaching success often shields leaders from accountability for their racial attitudes.
What we end up doing is ring-counting successful people. That's why I like Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr, because they're honest and straight shooters. They didn't necessarily need the George Floyd thing to happen, because they've been standing on the table for years. Versus what I see from a Belichick or a Dabo, where we'll give them a pass because they're so great at coaching football and they win so many championships. Because if one of them would have said what Vic Fangio said, we wouldn't be getting on them the same way.
Rose's analysis reveals how winning records can provide cover for problematic views, while coaches with lesser achievements face harsher scrutiny for the same statements. These revelations have sent shockwaves through NFL front offices, with some teams scrambling to address the allegations while others remain in stark denial. The implications of these revelations extend far beyond the NFL's walls. The economic impact is significant too. The NFL generates over $15 billion annually, much of it from black consumers and communities. If these allegations are substantiated, they could represent systematic employment discrimination on a massive scale. But perhaps the most damaging rebuttal to Fangio's claims came from someone who actually lived the locker room experience. Former NFL player and current ESPN analyst Dominique Foxworth directly contradicted Fangio's assertion about NFL unity, drawing from his own playing career.
I don't want to let the rest of y'all off the hook. Like, you can't point at him and say he's stupid and think that absolves you of your responsibility or the impact that you have on perpetuating more pernicious acts against black people in this country. So back to him in particular. Yes, that's stupid. But I do think that I know where...
Foxworth's testimony was particularly powerful because it came from direct experience. He had actually been in the NFL locker rooms that Fangio claimed were racially harmonious. But more importantly, Foxworth challenged everyone not to use Fangio as a scapegoat while ignoring their own role in perpetuating systemic problems. With coaches and players calling out systemic racism, the NFL now faces a question it can't dodge. Will it finally change, or keep protecting a broken system?